purely down to that. And we will see Ari Lax on Team of Reclamation. We'll see if he can finally win a feature match on camera here, facing off against Mono Red Aggro, which has always been a staple in Standard. Here it is in the hands of Paul Wu. We saw it being played by Brandon Burton earlier, and it seems to be maybe surprisingly popular in this event, or maybe that's just the matches that we're seeing here.
Yeah, this feels like the type of situation where a lot of these mono red aggro decks have been able to go under the ways that people are attacking the medium creature decks, like the medium-sized creature decks like mono green aggro.
And it's nice in this tournament with open deck lists that for Ari, he knows he needs to place a high importance on cards like Uro, on sweepers, on ways to keep pace with an aggressive draw, versus a handful of negates and mystical disputes, which you would love in the Team of Reclamation mirror, but are not going to serve you well here.
Right, and seeing those copies of Uro is just going to be so pivotal, so crucial against mono red aggro. You need to make sure that you actually have something that lets you get out onto the battlefield early like that.
And some of these aggressive creatures are not impressive by historical standards. You know, we talk about the power creep in 2019 and 2020. Tin Street Dodger is not an example of that, to put it mildly. But in your mono red deck, your one drops don't need to be that good to get the job done sometimes.
Back in my day, we had Raging Goblin, and we were happy.
Were you happy, though?
Okay, growth spiral coming down for Ari Lax. In response to this Bone Crusher Giant from Paul Wu, fantastic change of subject, putting a Blast Zone onto the battlefield.
And Expansion Explosion, not the card for this type of game, this type of matchup right now. But if Ari can, let's say, draw a Wilderness Reclamation to pair that with, maybe that could change very quickly. He doesn't, though, just finds another land. And so I think we're going to see Uro give Ari a crucial 3 life here.
Yeah, just having something to sort of feel like you're stabilizing in the turn that you have to take off for casting the front half of Uro is one of the things that makes it so strong in the current format.
And this is a big turn for Paul Wu. If he has Torbrand or Anax or Embercleave, those could really put Ari on the back foot here. And we see him thinking a little bit before sending in his attackers.
Really just trying to figure out if this is the spot where doing something like Embercleave is going to be more profitable than investing onto the battlefield in other ways, or just doing Runaway Steamkin math.
Absolutely. That card forces you to be good with algebra, but it does handsomely reward you if you are. Okay, and we see Shock. 2 damage to Ari and 1 more counter on the Steamkin. So not the scariest turn for Ari to face down there. He's still in this game, at least.
Yeah, this is a position where he's at a low life total for now, but with a Brazen Borrower, cycling a Shark Typhoon, there are ways for him to buy time.
Just how close are we to escaping that Uro, is my question.
I believe there are 2 cards in Graveyard, so we're still a ways off at this point.
Because that's what helps Ari get back in it here, and we see another Uro as revitalized, basically, getting through life, drawing a card, maybe making an additional land drop, we'll see. Oh, and Aethergust is a nice pickup there for Ari.
That's a big one, and that's something that we frequently see going after green cards, but it will do just nicely attacking Paul Wu's red cards.
Yeah, if Paul tries to attempt something like a Torbrand on this turn, or if he has some kind of expensive follow-up, that Aethergust might be exactly what Ari needs to stay in this game. How do you feel about Robber of the Rich as an Aethergust target?
Well, it's something that you can target. I almost feel like you may be priced into targeting Runaway Steamkin just so you can survive.
Yeah, we may have to gust something here.
Shark Typhoon is going to be much better at answering that Robber of the Rich than it is going to be a 4/4 Runaway Steamkin.
And Robbo will get a card from Ari's deck here. So we'll see if there's any interesting pickup from that. Growth Spiral for Paul Wu out of his mono red aggro deck. But that puts a card in Ari's graveyard. So now we are that much closer to Uro being able to escape. Fable Passage is another card towards that goal. Gonna activate that ability.
Is that the last card to get this Uro online?
if what needed to happen for Ari to escape Uro is for Paul to hit exactly a card like Growth Spiral off his Robber of the Rich and to cast it, then that's a good story. That's one for Ari's history books and Twitter threads a few years from now.
Look, sometimes you just need things to go right, and here, that is what is happening. It looks like Wu's flooding out just a little bit, and as it stands, this Brazen Borrower could even throw Robber of the Rich off balance a bit.
Those pieces to come together, and so now Uro's in play, and even a card like Torbrand or Embercleave that could steal the game from this position, Ari has a Brazen Borrower to counteract that.
All right.
So here's Anax, and that might fall into the same category.
Luckily, that's a card that it can make attacks look safer than they really are. If you just want to say Brazen Borrower or Anax, block Bone Crusher Giant and take 3 here.
What would be the fun to hit off this activation? Maybe an Aether Gust. I don't know exactly what it would be.
I think Aether Gust would be the best thing that it could possibly hit. It looks like it's just going to hit a land at this point, which is it's not that, right? It's not an Aether Gust. All right, so we see Uro go ahead, block the Bone Crusher Giant. 3 coming to Lax's face, but this is the turn where if Uro untaps, it's going to turn the corner. Oh, but Wu has an incredibly timely shot coming, which is going to go ahead, clean up that Uro off the battlefield.
But poor Wu seems mostly out of resources now, so even something like that Shark Typhoon could do a good job of setting things up.
Explosion, also a good bit of gas in its own right. Just going ahead and getting that Robber off the battlefield.
And I wonder exactly how many cards we're going to Explosion for here. If indeed that's what we're doing. You know, Ari does have a few different options available to him. And there's Anax again. Going to take down that Robber of the Rich before we can get the death trigger from Anax.
Just going for the high score of the full 4 cards. The thing that would have changed this is if Paul were to play something like a Torbrand.
Or another copy of Aether Gust and Wilderness Reclamation and another Expansion Explosion.
Oh, this might be exactly the kind of draw that Lax needed to find here to get back in this game to finally close the door.
And Wilderness Reclamation even working so well with that Blast and allowing him to clear up those two attackers.
All right, here's the Reclamation.
That's step 1. We're going to ambush a 2. We're not going to get a trigger from that. We're casting a decent number of spells this turn, but that's quite okay. We're happy with it.
Yeah, I'm sure that Ari will find a way to power through this incredibly trying time.
Ari, a very sympathetic figure in our feature matches here. He really is the underdog, I would say, at this stage. Aether Gust is going to bounce Anax to the top of the deck, or maybe the bottom at this point. I don't think Anax is going to help Paul Wu in this situation.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine Paul not just looking for things that provide immediate reach. Just those burn spells or Bone Crusher Giant are the best things that Wu could find off the top of his library. I don't think Anax, which is going to have Summoning Sickness, is what the doctor ordered at the moment.
So it is true, but potentially, the Paul Wu lost this game because he cast Growth Spiral in his mono red deck. And look, I get it. Growth Spiral is a fantastic Magic card. Best card in the standard format. Probably should have been banned if you want to let me get on that soapbox. However, maybe situationally not so good here.
I'm going to level with you. No one wants you on that soapbox. It'll be fine. We'll get through this. We're all thinking it. Let's just leave the elephant in the room. No one has to talk about it, you know?
You're saying that no one asked?
No, nobody did ask.
Okay. I'll try to keep that opinion to myself in future.
Don't worry, everyone else has it too. Shark Typhoon making a 2/2 Shark after Blast Zone mops up Wu's 1-drops. This is the moment where Ari might actually get to start attacking.
And this is where you know that things have gone south, is when the Reclamation deck with a motley crew of wolves and sharks and giants, I suppose, fairy rogues, gets to start applying the beatdown.
Yeah, this is the nightmare scenario where Wu really needs to make something happen, or this Team of Reclamation deck, Lax is just going to be able to close the door so fast.
2 triggers here on the end side for Arilax. Gets to pass the turn, fire off a big explosion after flooding a bunch of mana.
Oh, is that perfect? Is that Xaxes?
We did the math, Emma.
Explosion for Xaxes is going to seal this first game for Arilax.
Now, see, if you're doing that as Ari, you have to be careful not to miscount, because if you target Paul Wu for 13, let's say, and he draws 9 cards, you let Paul draw 9 cards, that's the way he gets back in this game. So you would hate to see that. But Ari here, he knows what he wants. He wants Elder Gargaroth. He already has his 4 main deck Aether Gust, count them, 4 Aether Gust, to go with 4 Bone-Crusher Giant, 3 Scorching Dragonfire. So Ari's anti-aggro plan, it's not about cards like Storm's Wrath. It's, I want interaction on 2 mana, interaction on 3 mana, a good follow-up, and then to slam the door shut with a big green creature as a follow-up.
Right, everything here is just defined by 2 mana interaction spells into threats that can close the door by themselves. That is the name of this post-board strategy as Lax is presenting it.
And on Paul Wu's side, fewer options typically for sideboarding for a mono red strategy. We see cards like Tibalt Rakish Instigator, which is a nice way to contain Uro, Subira Torzidi Caravana, which is another core 21 card that we haven't seen come into play yet, but maybe has some applications here. Other than that, though, it's a lot of removal for other aggro decks, and nothing that can really keep pace in this matchup.
No, the only thing that I could possibly see coming in here is something like Unchained Berserker. If you just want a 2-mana 3/1 that can apply early pressure. Taking a quick glance over Lax's deck, there isn't anything like Storm's Wrath to punish just going super wide. So having all of these sort of Blade of the Sixth Prides in your deck is something that is pretty reasonable when blockers and single spot removal spells are the biggest worry you have.
Is this where you tell me that back in your day you played Blade of the Sixth Pride and you were happy about it?
I had a foil and I loved it. I kept it in the front of my trade binder and told everyone I traded with it wasn't for trade.
Emma, did anybody ask?
No, absolutely not.
I'm glad we cleared that one up. So a fast start here for Paul Wu, getting out of the gates fast. Ari does not have a removal spell to keep pace. Does have Growth Spiral and Aether Gust on this turn. Maybe looking at using Aether Gust in conjunction with an expansion to contain 2 creatures here.
That's something I would end up expecting, depending on the sizing of this Runaway Steamkin and what Wu actually does with his mana here. This is a spot where playing a bunch of 1-drops, those aren't what you want to be Aether Gusting, but resetting a Runaway Steamkin is a great use of the card.
Yeah, you can let Paul Wu try to build towards a Runaway Steamkin turn that might be dependent on that additional mana, and then you can really break out that sequencing well with an Aether Gust. And yeah, sure enough, we see Aether Gust and then a second wannabe Aether Gust, taking out 2 of the attackers here for Paul Wu, and crucially putting 2 cards in his graveyard for that Uro that we see in Ari's hand.
And that's the biggest draw to this here, is just making sure that Lax is casting as many spells as possible to progress the game to a point where he does just get to cast Uro. Well, the good half of Uro. You get it.
They're both good, Emma. All Uro halves are good.
No, they aren't. Absolutely not. None of us are playing Uro's front half because we want to play the front half.
Well, you can speak for yourself on that one. In this case, though, typically Uro's front half is kind of the cost you pay for. It's the down payment for the reward later. In this case, 3 mana, gain 3 life, draw a card. That's actually okay. Ari will take that here.
Yeah, especially when it looks like Wu bottomed both of those cards. It feels like Wu is either looking for more impactful spells or just already has these great creatures in hand. I would expect it to be something like Torbrand, where he's really looking for that 4th land to pair with it.
Maybe an Embercleave, which by my count would not really have had a good spot to come in here. And yeah, Growth Spiral into Uro, a classic sequence. And Paul Wu is in
All right, going down to 12 and light up the stage being the next play from Wu, getting to exile a couple of cards.
Enough.
Especially
looking actually a little too late. Another piece of cheap interaction off the top for Ari and Scorching Dragonfire.
And this is the name of the game. Having all of this cheap interaction just builds towards Uro being able to be as exceptional as you need it to be against these aggressive strategies. When the name of the game is Uro, making sure you can adequately fill your graveyard early is the most important thing to prioritize.
And now, even those cards at the top of Wu's curve, like Torbrand, like Embercleave, Scorching Dragonfire can really help to contain those.
And now Wu just needs to find something to do to this Uro.
And I don't know what that could even be, honestly. Unlike a deck like Red Dot Sacrifice, no copies of Claim the Firstborn hanging out over here, so no way to turn Uro against its owner.
Right, something like that would be great here, but Wu, without any of those in his deck, it looks like the plan was just to get out ahead of Uro, not actually have to beat it heads up.
Yeah, Scott spitting hot fire here, sending Aridax down to 14 life, but that is way more than he needs at this point. Never a good sign when you get to turn 6, turn 7, and the Ram deck is in double digits.
All right.
And here it is, Embercleave, which is the one thing that maybe could keep Paul in this game. Scorching Dragonfire going to eat whatever that Embercleave attaches to.
Right, you want to believe in the cleave, but sometimes it just isn't meant to be.
And now Ari gets to untap and fire off a massive explosion. After attacking, after gaining 3 life, after making an extra land drop, drawing a card. Another land there from Ari, allowing him to turbocharge that explosion even further.
At this point, we're looking at a cool explosion for 6. Oh wow. My god.
What were you saying, Emma? Explosion for 6?
Oh yeah, no, that's my bad.
It looks like an explosion for 12 by my count.
Yeah, no, I guess not literally lethal, but it's given lethal a run for its money, that's for sure.
Lethal adjacent, I would say. And Ari, I think, making the same calculation of, I don't need it, because it's not lethal, I can undersize it a little bit, draw an Aethergast, a Bonecrusher Giant, a Scorching Dragonfire, hold that up, and then the game is formally locked up. There is no possible sequence that can get Paul back into this.
Oh yeah, just getting a fresh grip of cards at this point, still having an Uro on the battlefield. Things have really gotten away from Paul this game.
Ari even gets to cast a Growth Spell if he likes. Will be just sculling to hand size. Paul might.
No, he just says, you know what, what's the worst that can happen? I'm at 14. Let's just put the land into play.
All right, Paul Wu, what have you got? It's got to be very impressive if he's going to stay alive at top 8 in the tournament.
And Wu just trying to figure out what sequence of cards can actually get him back in this game, what winning a game from here looks like.
This is I won't say a look because it's virtual, but this is an experience I'm sure Ari has had so many times of your opponent just sitting there tanking, looking for their 0.01% to try and get themselves back in the game, and Ari just sitting there patiently, knowing that he's got this sewn up, knowing that he's playing a winner in all likelihood for top 8 next round in this tournament.
Just reducing the resources on the battlefield. Stomp on a 10 Street Dodger. Playing lands out. Going through the motions of the Uro, the attack, the draw, the land. Getting a little ahead of himself. Hasn't reached the damage before the second reclamation.
the showboating, cycling a massive Shark Typhoon.
Are we going to see a chump block? I don't think that's something you can do. If your line is hoping that Lax happens to just have absolutely nothing in hand, you sure aren't winning if you throw your Torbran away. Torbran plus Embercleave is just the most powerful thing this deck is capable of.
How does that compare to Explosion for some very obscenely high number? Oh, Redcap Melee, wow. And that card, it makes a lot of sense to board in if you think, oh, he's going to be trying to stabilize with, you know, a 4/3 Bonecrusher Giant, which Melee can easily swat out of the way, or a Nightpack Ambusher, a big Shark token that's trying to take down your biggest attacker. So that card makes a lot of sense, but neither that nor anything else is going to be good enough here.
Right, the way that Lax has really prioritized making Uro work is the reason that Redcap Melee has more or less just been invalidated. And there are no more basics for that Fabled Passage as far as we're aware.
Things just going from bad to worse for Ari Laxer.
Well, Shark Typhoon, Ambusher on top. I'm sure Lax will find a way to cobble together a game win from here.
A little sad not to see a hardcast Shark Typhoon, but it is what it is.
And looking at how this deck is postured, is it so much better against the mono red aggro deck than what Paul Wu was likely expecting. Bringing mono red aggro to this event is just something you want to beat up on Storm's Wrath with instead. But Ari Lax has the tools and